is fundamentally completely different than murder, and we can see this just through biology.
Yeah, this is not accurate in terms of biology. There's a lot in it that's true, but there's a lot that's left out, which undermines the overall conclusion that the embryo is some kind of invading force, tricking the woman's body into accepting it. The video is presented as the view of scientists, but it's just a pro-choice narrative laid on top of a bunch of biological facts. It's true the embryo has to have biological mechanisms in order to avoid an immune response because the embryo is a genetically distinct human organism from the mother. It is a different human being, as we all were at some point in our mother's uteruses. It doesn't then follow that the embryo is a parasite. There are some similarities between the embryo and parasites, like taking nutrients from a host and avoiding immune responses, but can you think of any differences? For example, where does the embryo come from? Because if it's a parasite, it's an endoparasite, which means that it lives inside the host body, but endoparasites don't just appear in a host body. The malaria parasite is injected through mosquito bites. Roundworms, you have to accidentally eat their eggs, which is super gross. But we know embryos don't enter from an external environment. They are created within our bodies, because our bodies are specifically trying to make that happen. For example, we release an oocyte, which is the egg cell, on a monthly basis for decades. And on the membrane of the oocyte, there is what's called the ZP3 glycoprotein, and that serves as a sperm binding receptor. And once the sperm penetrates the oocyte gives off waves of calcium ions, which cause a cortical reaction, which prevents polyspermy. Polyspermy is when you have more than one sperm penetrate the egg. This is especially interesting with the whole embryo as a parasite narrative, because if you have polyspermy, the resulting cell isn't viable. So it would be a really terrible parasite because it'd be dead. And yet we have specific mechanisms in place to try to prevent that from happening and to make sure that the resulting cell is viable, probably because we need to be able to make this happen in order to sustain the existence of our species. That's another major difference, by the way, between embryos and parasites. If the embryo is a parasite narrative were true, and our bodies are trying really hard to fight off these invaders, then if we succeed, our species dies out. Even before an embryo exists, our bodies are preparing for the possibility of one. Our uterine lining thickens so that it would be ideal for binding a blastocyst. Estrogens thin cervical mucus so that it's easier for sperm to penetrate. And that's all when there is no other organism involved, in case there might be. Does any of this imply that we must have children? No. These are just biological facts. But they also don't imply that the embryo is a parasite, much less some kind of aggressive invader. You know what else is a biological fact? Abortion kills human organisms. I think if pro-choice people were okay with their position, they would just accept that and move on. Instead, they try to pathologize all of pregnancy, which is stunningly anti-female, by the way, in order for them to feel comfortable with their political perspective. It's just not a good look.